Our story begins not with glory, but with vulnerability. It's the 15th century. England is a relatively weak kingdom, licking its wounds from the Hundred Years' War with France, and watching as Spain and Portugal explore new worlds. But the spark was there. Enter John Cabot, sailing under the English flag in 1497. He reached Newfoundland, staking one of the earliest English claims in the New World. But real momentum came a century later, when Queen Elizabeth I sent privateers like Sir Francis Drake to raid Spanish treasure fleets. Think of it like early corporate espionage, except with cannons. Soon came the first permanent English colony, Jamestown, Virginia, in 1607. But it wasn't gold that made this venture rich. It was tobacco. And tobacco meant plantations. And plantations meant slaves. Thus, the transatlantic slave trade became an engine of the empire.
By the 18th century, the empire was no longer a side project. It was the crown jewel of British ambition. In North America, Britain controlled Canada and the 13 colonies. In the Caribbean, it ruled over islands producing sugar, rum, and immense profits, often at unimaginable human cost. But the real pivot point came with the 7 Years' War. In 1763, Britain defeated France and took Canada and large parts of India. It was, in a sense, Britain's First World War, and it won. If the empire were a house, this was the moment it added a second floor and a golden rooftop. But this victory was expensive. The British government taxed its American colonies to pay the bills. You might have heard how that turned out. In 1776, 13 colonies declared independence. It was a humiliating loss, a wound to imperial pride. But like a boxer taking a hit, Britain staggered, then came back swinging.
While the Atlantic door was closing, the Indian door was wide open. At first, India was ruled not by Britain directly, but by a corporation, the East India Company. Think of it as Amazon, but with an army. After crushing local resistance, like in the Battle of Plassey in 1757, the company tightened its grip. Trade soared, tea, textiles, spices, but famine, corruption, and cruelty followed. In 1857, Indian soldiers, or sepoys, rebelled. The British called it a mutiny. Indians called it the First War of Independence. The rebellion failed, but it changed everything. The British government dissolved the company and took control directly. Thus began the British Raj, rule over 300 million people.
By the late 19th century, under Queen Victoria, the British Empire reached its glorious and most controversial peak. It was an age of invention, railways, telegraphs, the Industrial Revolution. Britain became the workshop of the world. And it exported not just goods, but governance. British law, language, cricket. Yes, even cricket spread to every corner of the map. But so did arrogance. The empire believed it had a mission, the so-called white man's burden, to civilize the world. This civilizing mission masked a darker truth: forced labor, racial hierarchies, stolen resources. The empire looked majestic from London, but to many in Africa or Asia, it looked like chains.
The First World War rocked the empire. Over 2 million soldiers from the colonies fought for Britain, and many died. Afterward, India, Africa, and the Caribbean wanted something in return: self-rule. But the empire resisted. In 1919, British troops massacred peaceful protesters in Amritsar, India, killing hundreds. It was a turning point, a lawyer named Mohandas Gandhi would begin a movement of nonviolent resistance. Then came World War II. Again, the empire rallied, but when the war ended, Britain was broke and exhausted. India gained independence in 1947. Pakistan split away. Soon after, Africa followed. Ghana, Kenya, Nigeria. The empire unraveled, often peacefully, sometimes with bloodshed.